So proud of your work thus far in elementary Greek. You have covered the basics of Greek nouns. You've thought about their declensions. We've looked at adjectives briefly, prepositions, and now in the last few chapters, pronouns. We have thought about the first person pronoun, ego. We've thought about second person, su, third. We've thought about autos. And now on to the demonstratives in chapter 13 and now the relatives here. Let me pray and ask God's blessing as we look at chapter 14. I'll use this chapter to discuss relatives as Mounts does and to do just a brief bit of review on all three of these classes of pronouns we've looked at so far, with also the demonstrative. Let's pray. Lord, strengthen students as they think about pronouns and put these ideas together. I pray that you will give them confidence with vocab, and especially as they open your word and begin to read it in comparison with their English text and pick up ideas. I ask this in Christ's name. Thinking about pronouns just by way of a simple review. Relative pronouns specifically show relationships in a sentence. I don't mean relationships necessarily between people, this person and this person. Relative pronouns relate ideas in sentences. So they relate this idea with that one, which might be a person. It might be some kind of entity or figure, an actor, or a recipient of action, but there is a connection of people, but not just always in some kind of a relationship together. When we think about translating pronouns, here is just some basic information that Mounts provides in overview form. And I want to note specifically that many of your word processing apps use the word that for all genders. It's increasingly common for that to replace which and who. I'm not as concerned with what you would translate those, especially in your writing, but try to get the idea across. And with that idea, we need to keep in mind that a relative pronoun introduces a clause. That's the key idea to keep in mind, that a clause is a self-contained unit within a sentence. It includes the relative pronoun, often a verb, maybe another noun, but this whole complex modifies something outside of it. The relationship that we have in view is the relationship between this clause and this element outside. This clause is modifying what is outside. So the clauses are self-contained. I want to review just briefly here the 2-1-2 paradigm because the relative pronoun follows this and it reflects the definite article. And you're familiar with the process of this. Would be good if you could just write this out and try to get it even from memory. Quiz yourself. Should be able to have suing, eon is us down, sin, eon is, and then nuing, on is ah, and then keeping in mind the connection with the final stem vowel, and that I have on the right side of the paradigm all the way down. Just by way of review, keep in mind that feminine nominative singular, there is no case ending, and that is why the lexical form for the nominative feminine singular is the same as the stem, that which has the asterisk by it in Mounts. When we think about the definite article here, you will keep in mind, just as you have looked already at chapter 14, that the definite article right here is very close to the relative pronoun. There are a few distinctions. The relative pronoun loses the tau here, and here in the genitive, dative, accusative, singular and plural, loses the tau. But you take away the tau here, and you take away the tau all the way across in the neuter, and you have the definite articles we'll see here on the next slide. So the relative pronoun paradigm, again, you can see suing, eonis, sin, eonis, no ending with the neuter, but we have just the ha here, and then hu and ho, and then ha, hon, hois, ha. So if we take away the tau that we would expect at the beginning of each of the neuter definite articles, then we have the relative pronoun. So the distinction often is the tau, and then also the accent mark. As Mounts notes on page 138 and 139, the accent mark, especially here and here, will clue you to the relative pronoun, the definite article, he, with the rough breathing mark. What distinguishes it is from the relative is that relative has that accent mark. It's going up. Do you remember? Is that acute or grave? Yes, acute. It's going up. The grave goes down, and that is the mark here. That acute accent also right there on has. Ha as well. Ha, and here grave and grave in the plurals. Same here and here. The feminine nominative plural and the nominative masculine plural. We have the grave, and that wraps up our distinguishing characteristics with the relative and the definite article. I've moved quickly through just the paradigms because I want to get to some translation procedure and help you to see how these relative pronouns, as well as other pronouns in just a moment, cohere ideas in a text. So the key idea with pronouns is that we want to find their antecedent. The relative pronoun agrees in number and gender with the antecedent. Its case is determined by how that word is used in a clause. So here's an example for us. I'm going to read. Feel free to pause the screencast for a moment if you would like to, and that may help you to read and follow the ideas. But I'm going to read this whole clause here. Ha anthropos, hon gnoskomen, didaske chemos. What we have here, we find our verb. We have a couple of verbs here. Here's one, gnoskomen, and another, didaske. And we look at our nominative singular here, ha anthropos, the man, and then we can look just right here, the man teaches us. That's a sentence. The man teaches us. But what we have within that sentence is this relative clause. I'm just going to erase for a moment here. Within this sentence, we have a relative clause, and the relative clause is right here, hon gnoskomen. So what we look for is the antecedent for hon, and we find it right here. So we have in this sentence, the man teaches us. It's the man whom we know, hon gnoskomen, whom we know. That is, we know him. This hon as an accusative here is the direct object of the verb gnoskomen. The man whom we know teaches us. Do you see how this relative clause right here modifies ha anthropos? And do you see how hon is the direct object of gnoskomen? So we have this clause right here modifying ha anthropos, and this direct object for gnoskomen. In our translations, we need to be flexible and try to bring that idea into English. Let's look at one more example here. Has hu lambane ton stauron autu, kai akaluthe apisomu, uk estin mu axios. He who takes up his cross and follows me is worthy of me. That sentence has two negations. He who does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. And our relative, he who, whoever does not take up his cross and follow me, that whole section there is the relative clause, is not worthy of me. So when we think about relative clauses, we just get rid of the markings to this point. Here's our relative clause, right there to right there. We have another clause outside of it. Here's our verb. He is not worthy of me. That's how we would translate this clause. He is not worthy of me. Well, who is not worthy of me? And this initial clause provides the answer. Whoever does not take up his cross and follow me. So, hos, right here, is the subject of esten as well. I want to provide a bit more practice here just with the relative, similar to the last slide. The next slide we'll look just at a passage in John, the first chapter of John's Gospel, and think not just about relative pronouns, but all pronouns together. Again, pause the screencast if you would need to. Hos gar ein thele ten psukein autou sose apalese autein. Hos de on apalese ten psukein autou cheniken emu kai tu euangeliu sose autein. We have the relative used here and here. It's the same relative, and it's the subject for whoever, if he would desire to save his soul, would lose it. But whoever loses his soul in behalf of me and the gospel will save it. The hos here introducing a clause and a mirrored clause that follows, and we have a parallelism here. This, the subject of thele, and here whoever loses his soul, the subject of apalese, and also sose. The next clause we have in the example from John 5:21. Chospergar ha pater egere tus necrus kai zoapoie. Hutas kai ha huias hus thele zoapoie. Here we have our relative hus going through the translation. For as the Father raises the dead and he gives life, thus also the Son, he gives life to whomever he wills. The accusative here, accusative masculine singular, is the object of zoapoie, and the subject of zoapoie, yes, is over here, ha huios. The Son gives life, hus thele, to whomever he will. This hus here, introducing a clause that extends here to zoapoie. Our final example in John 8:40. Noonday zetetin me apaktenai anthropon hostain aletheon humin la lelica chen ekusa paratutheu tuta abram uk epoisen. But now you seek to kill me. You seek to kill me. We have this accusative here. You seek to kill me. And then this accusative here as well. There's a relationship between me and a man. You seek to kill me, a man. And then we have our relative hos. And hos tain alethein, who spoke the truth to you. This is our clause right here. And this clause is modifying anthropon. Hos here modifies anthropon. This man, you seek to kill me, a man who lel'aleka. We'll talk in verbs here soon about this pattern of lots of consonants right by vowels in staccato form, like this lel'aleka, the difficulty of pronunciation, who spoke the truth to you. And then we have another relative, and let me just erase here to pick up these two relative clauses and how they are working together. One relative here, one here. We've already worked through this first clause, and we've recognized that hos goes back to anthropos. The hos agrees in number and gender with anthropon. Hos here as a nominative is not an accusative like anthropon, because here hos is the subject of lel'aleka, who spoke the truth, tenaleitheon, to you. Now we have this second relative, hein. Hein reaches back to truth, tenaleitheon. It's accusative feminine singular. Now, tenaleitheon, you see the definite article is also an accusative. Why the matching in case? Well, tenaleitheon is the direct object of lel'aleka, and hein is the direct object of akusa. I heard it pra to theou. From God, this Abraham did not do. Just pronoun review quickly. We have a few highlighted here. Let me just read through and make some quick notes. Egeneta anthropos, apestelmenos pra theou, onoma auto Ioannes, Houtas elthen eis marturion, hina marturese peri tu photos, hina pontis pistiusosin di autou. Uk ein akenos ta phos, all hina marturese peri tu photos. We have our pronouns here. This one, egeneta, there was a man having been sent from God, the name to him John. The name to him is John. Now we have our demonstrative. This one came to testify in order that he would testify concerning the light. What's the antecedent of houtos? It goes back to Ioannes, right here. Goes back to John. There's our antecedent. This one, the antecedent is John. We come down, hina pontis pistiusosin di autou, in order that all would believe through him. Not ein akenos, he was not that light. Here, akenos, again, the demonstrative pronoun acting like an adjective modifying light, and it matches case number gender. Here, autou, just as the direct object of dia, and as a pronoun, and here, auton, as the direct object of egno. The world did not know him, speaking of Jesus, and the referent here is this light, this true light, but now speaking as a personified him. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. There's, again, a pattern here, the direct object, they did not receive him. Our vocab, again, the more creative that you can be, the better off. Chrema, rhetor, word or speech. Enopion, nope, you before me. In the presence of or before. If you don't have peace about something, it might be an error, a rene. Continue to work on those and press forward. Watch how pronouns provide coherence in sentences.